Hi, I'm Chris Sikora, and I'm going to step you through Inventor 2024. This is exercise 1, and what you see there is basically what we're going to build. It's actually a very simple part. It has a couple extrusions. As you can see here, we're going to go ahead and put in dimensions. We're going to put in fillets, or what they call radiuses, as well as chamfers. That's the green area here, which is an angled surface. We will also shell it out, make it a thin walled part. So let's begin. So to start with, after you install Inventor, you could go right up to here to New, or you could go to File and New, and you'll see there's different options. I'm just going to go to New and bring up this little dialog box. And what this does is this enables you to find templates, and you have English and metric that you could choose from. We're going to go with English, and I do prefer the metric system, but we're here in the United States, and so my students understand what an inch is better than they understand what a centimeter is when we talk about it. So I'm going to go ahead and stick with the standard IPT, which is Inventor part, and hit Create. Okay. One of the first things we could do actually is set it up so it's maybe a little bit brighter, or we could change the background. So I want to show you where the heart of Inventor is. There's actually a few of them inside Inventor, but this one is going to go to, we're just going to go up here to File and then Options. And this Options menu, let me move this down a little bit. Oops. Get it to size. Okay, this gives us for example, if we want the background, and you'll see there's a bunch of different options here. We could go to display, and over here we could use document settings or use application settings. That means we could have it display the edges. If we go to settings here, there's some additional settings if you want to see shadows and realistic tracing. Those things, you want to have a really good graphics card if you're going to turn them on. If not, I would leave them off because it might slow down your system a bit. You also have the type of projection, orthographic or perspective. Orthographic is probably the best for when you're modeling, and then you could, once you make a photo rendering like I showed you earlier, then you could set it to this. But I think right now I'm just going to go ahead and cancel that. Now, some of the other things are display quality, smooth, medium, rough. If you have a very like if you're working off of a tablet, let's say, or something, a Windows tablet, you might want to set that to rough just because the graphics probably aren't that strong in a template or tablet. Okay, also colors. You'll see that you have the ability to set up lighting and backgrounds. I have mine set to presentation, and you could enable highlights and so on, and you go with a background image or just one color. I'm going to go with one color, and I'm just choosing this one because it shows up better for my classes on the screen. But you could pick whatever you like. You'll see there's all sorts of neat ones in here. And like I said, I'm going to stick with that. And I'm going to hit apply, and then I'm going to go ahead and close it. And as we can see in the background here, it's white on mine at least. And you could set yours to whatever you like. Now this over here on the left is called the model browser. And it's going to contain basically a roadmap of everything you do in Inventor. So you're going to see features that you create, holes, or whatever geometry that's generated. Also, if you hit the little plus symbol to the left of origin, you'll see there's 3 planes, YZ, XZ, and XY, which that's your front plane, XZ is your top plane, and YZ is your right plane, basically, if you want it from that perspective. Your center point, you can barely see it because it's yellow and I have a white background, but that is your origin essentially, kind of your anchor point, although unlike other systems similar to this can actually be deleted and you could move it if you want. But I like to keep it for my students in place. Once you become more advanced, feel free to do whatever you like, but try not to delete it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and click on Sketch. Now you'll see there's this little arrow underneath. Whenever you see an arrow next to an icon, it usually means there was more options. There's 3D Sketch. We're not going to do that in this class. 3D Sketch is great for piping, tubing, structural steel, things like that. Not so great for today's part. So we're going to stick with a 2D Sketch that we're going to base our geometry off of. Okay, now right away, you'll see to the right of your pointer as it's floating on the screen, it says select the plane to create the sketch. Now when selecting a plane, it's really up to you when you're looking at something like this is maybe the right side of this mouse, this could be considered the top, maybe that's considered the top. But basically you pick which profile you want to draw and then pick the plane that best represents it. Like I'm going to go ahead and honestly, it doesn't matter really too much. As long as you gain better access to using this, then you'll eventually see that it doesn't always matter where you start. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and when we clicked on that, the screen went planar to our monitor, and we could actually see the crosshairs, and there's our little dot in the middle, our anchor point. So we're going to start by drawing the rectangle. Now, if you hit the little arrow to underneath rectangle, you see there's a bunch of options here for slots and center rectangles. We'll learn about those a little later on. But we're going to go with the 2-point. Now, hover your pointer over what I call the origin or the center point there. When you get the green dot, go ahead and click. Now, when I refer to click, I'm referring to always the left mouse button. The right mouse button, if I ever want you to use that, I'll be sure to say it twice, and I'll say right mouse button, just so it will click and you'll know which one to click on. All right, now as I move this to the upper right, I'm not clicking anymore, I'm just hovering, and I'm moving my pointer to the upper right. And you can see parameters appear, like in blue we could see this 0.321. Well, we want this actually to be 3 inches wide, so you can actually type in just 3. You don't have to type 3.00. In fact, that's a bad habit, in my opinion. If you go out for a job and you're typing in a lot of extra information, it kind of has the appearance that you're not very efficient. So in this case, if you know it's going to be 3 inches and straight, just leave it at 3. Okay, now we want to get that other one over there. Now you don't want to move over and click on it as much as you could just hit the tab key in the upper left corner of your keyboard, and it will automatically go to the next one. And now you could type in this case, it's going to be 5 inches in height. And again, you don't need to type 5.00 unless there's unless it's 5.125, of course, that's when you would use that. All right, and hit enter. And now to zoom to fit, see this little box over on the right? It's our view selector. You could actually rotate that by clicking and dragging, but just select the front and it will refit to the screen. Okay, now you can see we have the 3 by 5, and there's these little symbols, and they look like parallel lines, and basically those are indicating either parallelism, in this case perpendicularity, this means horizontal, and sometimes you might see vertical and things like that. Those are constraints or relations, or as they call it here, constraints. You have 2 types. You have dimensional constraints, you can see that button right there, where you could add the dimensions in for the length, the width, the height, diameter, things like that. That helps constrain it. It locks it to that actual parameter inside the CAD system. Now these other things are additional. I don't like to use the word layer because those who use AutoCAD know about layers. This is different than that. This is an additional type of constraint that actually locks geometry in, so it either stays parallel or tangency or equal to, like if you make 2 circles or 4 circles and you want them all the same size, you could just select them all and hit equal, and they're all locked in, and one of them will control it. You dimension that one. Whenever you change the dimension on one, all the others update. So constraints are a very powerful tool in this software. All right, let's go ahead and we're just going to go to 3D model, the tab up here. Now if these tabs ever disappear, it might be because you accidentally clicked on this. Go ahead and try it. Click on this minimize button and you'll see it will actually continue to minimize it with less and less information until, if you keep clicking, it will eventually reset itself and go back. So just remember that that's an option there. Okay, there's also a little arrow to the right, and basically you have some options there essentially too, same thing. But when you're just learning the software, I recommend having these up like this. It's good. When you become more advanced, feel free to customize it however you want. Okay, let's go to extrude. Now we're going to take that profile, which is what I call water type boundary, because we use the rectangle tools. There's no openings in it, and we just go to extrude, and extrude will bring us into the 3rd dimension. Now, for some reason, it kicks us into this isometric mode, and it no longer zoomed to fit. So what I would recommend doing, remember where that box is in the upper right? Go to the home button in the upper left of that box. And the home brings you to an isometric view and it zooms to fit again. So whenever I say home, that's what I'm referring to if you want to click on the home button usually. All right, and here you'll see for conceptualization work, you have the ability to grab this arrow and drag it forwards or backwards. Make sure it's pulled forward. Now, you'll see the dimensional constraint is up there. Let's go ahead and put in 0.5. Now notice I didn't click in there and backspace on it. That's another bad habit. Makes you look inefficient if you use that. I don't really care for my students if you do or not, but if you ever get tested for a job during an interview and how you use the software, never do that because they're going to sit there waiting like, oh goodness, this is a novice user. Whereas it makes you look much more advanced if you just type in what you have there. So 0.5, I hit enter. Okay, so now we have our first solid model. Now, if you hold the shift button down on your keyboard, don't let go, hold it down, and move your pointer over the surface. Now, on your mouse, there's a wheel. Most of them have a wheel or they have a third mouse button. You could, instead of scrolling, if you scroll, it's zoom in and out. But if you push it down like it's a button, and then move your mouse left, right, up and down, and remember, you're holding shift, this is how you dynamically rotate. So that's one way. So you could pivot, as they call it. And over here in the upper right, you could also click on a face and drag it, and you get a little bit of movement there. It's kind of quirky, but you could also click on corners of the box or click on the home button again, or click on top or front or right if you want to go to that specific view orientation. There's also these two little arrows here in the upper right. This is for clockwise and counterclockwise rotation. But let's go back to the home button. So there you've learned a little bit about how to rotate. Now we're going to go ahead and build another block on top of this one that's not quite as tall. So select this face. Now previously we went to start 2D sketch and we only had the 3 planes to work with, but now that we have a block basically, we could sketch on any flat surface. So we could actually sketch on this face. So if you click on this face, this quick launch toolbar will appear. And you'll see there's options. There's edit the extrude. We don't want that one yet. That one would edit the 0.5 thickness. We don't need that. There's also edit sketch. Look at the 3x5 appears. We could edit that and change those dimensions or any other geometry on that. There's share sketch. It's kind of like a copy. There's make sketch visible. If you want it to show all the time and reuse it, you can. But what we're looking for is the little green plus symbol. And go ahead and hit create sketch. Now this one is to create a finish, so you could color the surfaces, but let's go ahead and just hit create sketch. And so what it does is it opens up a new sketch on that. Go ahead and click on front again to center it. And notice there's all these other tools. We will use those in a little bit, but we're going to stick with the rectangle because it's simple. So again, go with 2-point rectangle. Hover your pointer to the lower left corner of your block. And when you get the green dot that appears, go ahead and click. Now move your pointer to the upper right. Now here's the thing. We don't want to put in 3 inches on this. You could, but it would be disjointed from the block in the rear. And maybe our design, or what they call design intent, is to have both of them update. And once this is created, let's say it's a fixture for some sort of machine, and you know that it always has to extend the same width as whatever this is. And design, there's always change occurring in it. So you have to think of design intent. Now, I tell my students who are new at this, don't think too deeply about it. It wastes too much time when you're first learning. It's something that you pick up over time generally. So, but in this case, we wanted to follow that 3-inch width. So what you could do here is you could hover over the right edge, and you see a little symbol to the right of your pointer near the dimension, and it automatically goes to 3. You don't have to type in a value. Actually click on that edge, and it will assume now it's locked in coincident to that edge. So if we ever widen this, this block that we're creating now will widen with it. Okay, let's go to dimension and select this top line here, and then select this bottom line here. Now move your pointer to the right and it should give you a dimension between those two lines. And it's always good to lay your dimensions out for not just yourself so it's easier to read, but for other users, because someone else might end up having to change this, like your manager. You don't want to make your manager mad. So lay your dimensions out, easy to read. So I recommend, if you can, center them here. Now we do have our Engineering 101 class, and where you make drawings and we learn how to design like an engineer. We teach you this, but this class isn't really for that, but just sharing that. Okay, now we could go ahead and type in 1.5. And again, notice I did not backspace over that, just typed in 1.5. Then you could hit the green check or the enter key, and it goes to that dimension. So the height is there. Now notice there is no indicator for the width, and that's because it's locked into the right side. In fact, you could see that yellow line there in mine. Yours might be a different color if you chose a different color, remember, for the screen. That's basically just an indicator. It had to create an off-edge relationship, or on-edge, I should say. Okay, let's go to 3D model, go to extrude, and now you'll see it push it forward. This does need to be 0.5. Now, if you see this dialog over here on the left, we didn't really look at it before. We just went ahead with what was on the screen. So for more details, you could always look up here, and like you could flip it here. You could have it go both directions, asymmetrically both directions, if you want it through all, up the surface, things like that. You could just go ahead and leave it at 0.5 right in here and hit OK. And you'll see it automatically merges the two volumes together, so it's one. Okay, let's move on. Let's try putting a hole in. Now there is a hole tool here, but I'm gonna show you the manual way just so you can see how to make a piece of geometry and use it to cut. So select this face and go to our little green plus symbol again, create sketch. And we'll have to click on front again so it centers. Go to the circle tool. If you hit the circle, the arrow underneath there, see there's ellipses, there's circle tangent. We just want circle center point. Hover over this upper left area, click, and drag out a circle and make this 0.75. Hit enter. All right, now let's go to dimension it to locate it, because right now it's just arbitrarily floating there wherever I clicked. So I'm going to go to dimension, and I'm going to dimension from the center point to the left edge. And then I just move this up here for the dimension, center it so it's easy to read. Type in 1, hit enter. Let's try that again. Click on the center point, and then the top edge, select. Move it over to the left here, type in 1, hit enter, and now hit escape on your keyboard to get out of the dimension tool. You could click on the dimension tool again, it'll turn it off, but escape's just easy. Now let's get this out here, this dimension in the upper left corner, and one recommendation I make is with this software, in the 6th week we learn how to actually make the drawings for this. And the drawings are the 2D layouts that you would have, basically a blueprint. Okay, so if you lay these out in the fashion how you would like to show them in the blueprint in advance, you could just retrieve them. It's really nice and easy. So it's just a little recommendation. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. Okay, let's go to 3D model now. And again, we're going to go to extrude. Now, if you notice, it tries to add material at first, but over here you have the ability to flip it, or we could go to cut, which is going to remove material. But let's flip it first. And what you'll see is there's a little bit of AI built in here, and AI is a little bit strong of a word, or a lot strong of a word for this, but it knew, because it knew there was a volume behind it, to go to cut automatically. So there's been instances though where that's not always that smart, and so you might have to just double check to make sure. But it depends on your geometry that you have behind it. Okay, now right now it's going to go 0.5 deep, which is the thickness of that plate. However, design intent, let's talk about that one more time here, is your plan. Now, what if we knew that that hole always has to go through, because there's going to be a bolt that feeds through it, that locks into another plate underneath perhaps, and if you ever change the thickness of that wall to 0.75, you don't always want to have to go back to the hole too and change that to the same. So there's an option here, through all. That will ensure no matter what design change occurs, it's always going to be a through hole. So if anyone ever thickens it, you don't have to worry about it. Because what happens if you don't use that design intent, ideally, you might send that out not even realizing that the hole doesn't go through anymore, and you have it fabricated. The guys in the shop go ahead and they make it exactly how you specified, and all of a sudden you have all these parts and the hole doesn't go through. So that's why it's not a bad idea to think of design intent. Again, don't think too much of it just yet. Hit OK. All right, so this finishes the part as far as we go, with the exception of, like, if you ever want to change things, you could, sometimes you're able to double click, and I'm not seeing that happen. There's a lot of neat tools here though. Oops, I didn't want that. There's the measure tool. But if you click on this, you could go to edit that sketch and you'd be able to change things. If you go to edit extrude, you now could adjust it. Like right there, I could just drag it forward and now it's thicker. There's also, when you make a mistake, there's the undo button. Brings you back. Okay, and there's a redo button as well. All right, so those of you who are taking my class, this is all I expect you to make. There's more to this video. There's added value to it. It's only an extra 10 or so minutes, but you might actually learn how to be much better at modeling. And those of you who are artistic will have a little fun with this and add some colors and things to it. But those of you who don't really care, if you're just taking this class because you're more on the engineering side, you could just go ahead, do what I'm about to do right now and save this as a PDF. So you could just do this, so you could submit it to me in D2L. Those of you taking my class, you go over here to export, and you'll see PDF. Now there's a 3D PDF, but I don't like that. I don't use that yet. Just go to PDF, and you'll go ahead and set it up, locate where you want to drop it, and then go ahead and you'll name it capital E1, and I would hit spacebar and go INV. And the reason why INV, because many of you at the college that I'm teaching are taking my other classes, and all these are very similar. Like there's an E1 for SolidWorks, there's an E1 for Creo, and so just so you don't get confused and send me the wrong one, because I can tell usually the difference between the models, and I might have to send it back and say, oh, you sent me your SolidWorks E1 versus your Inventor. This will prevent you from accidentally doing that. Okay, so I'm just going to hit save. But again, you could save this. I would recommend save it on your desktop or someplace you know you can find it. And that's it. There's your PDF. Go ahead, submit it in D2L under assignments. Those of you who want to stick around and watch some additional functions and make this look fabulous like it looked in the beginning, here we go. All right, so there is the fillet tool. The fillet tool puts a nice radius, like if you were to sand a corner smooth so someone doesn't cut themselves on it. That's what it does. And set your radius here to 1. And go ahead and select this edge right here, and you'll see it puts in the fillet. Okay, it's the preview. You could grab this arrow, drag it in out, and adjust it if you want. But I'm going to go back to 1. All right. Now let's go back to fillet again, leave it at 1, and go ahead and select this. Now we could have done both edges. To be honest, I accidentally hit enter, and I figured, oh, you know, it's a good opportunity to show you how to do this. So you could add another one, but we could have had them in the same one feature. Now take a look over on the left here. Our feature tree, or our browser as we call it, you can see there's the extrusion. There's extrusion 1, that's the first one we made. There's extrusion 2. There's extrusion 3. Here's the fillet and fillet 2. So you could see all of the steps, and these enable you to edit those. So let's say, let me delete fillet 2 here. I could actually right click on it and you'll see delete. So that removes it. But what if I wanted to incorporate it in fillet 1? Just simply right click and edit feature. Now click on that edge and hit OK. And look at that. It's in one feature. All right. Anyhow, that's entirely up to you if you want to do these. Remember, this part is just for fun. Have fun with it. Those of you who have fun with this are going to be far better at this software, especially if you're looking to get a job in it. Enjoy altering the model a little bit. Just so you know, those of you taking my class, the midterm and the final, don't alter those because I have to grade it exactly how the drawing is supposed to be. But for exercises and feature and these, you are entitled to add to it. Okay, just don't change it too much because I might think you did it wrong and mark it up. So I would recommend for the labs, I don't really care much, but the exercises and definitely the tests, try to keep them as close as possible to what I have in book or in the video. Okay, I'm going to go to chamfer. Now chamfer, instead of a radius, it actually is a straight angle across the edge. And so right here I could set this 0.125, it already is set. And you have distance to distance on a 90-degree angle. If they're equal, the distances, it's going to be a 45-degree angle that it puts in. Okay, so we'll leave it at distance to distance, but you can specify distance at an angle too, like maybe you need 60 degrees by 0.125. All right, but we'll keep it distance to distance. Edge is already turned on. Select this edge right here, and notice it chains this. You could turn off edge chain if you didn't want it to go across, but we want it to go across. All right, and click on this one too, and hit OK. So there's our chamfer. Now let's go ahead and hold Shift and your middle wheel, remember the middle wheel? Push it down and rotate this so you're looking at the backside. Get it like that. All right, you could also use this if you want and get it a little closer. And you could use your wheel, by the way, if you wanted to zoom up, like let's say you wanted to zoom up to the hole, get your pointer over the hole and scroll backwards and it will zoom closer and closer. Your pointer is your focal point for zoom, okay? So you want to zoom into a specific area, get your pointer over it. All right, now shell. Let's say we want this to be a thin-walled plastic part. Go to shell. And we'll keep it at 0.1, sounds pretty good. And now look at this, it says remove faces. So what faces do you want to open up? Let's say this back one. How about this side one too? And this bottom one. You could do this one, but let's leave it on there. It looks cool. Hit OK. There it is. Now, you could deselect them by just clicking on them again and it would come back. Or you could hit undo if you don't like what you see and try it again. Or you could click on this with the right mouse button and delete it and then start over. So there's a lot of options as far as editing. Okay, so let's go back to the house up here, which is an isometric. And let's start to add some colors to this. Now over here you'll see there's these generic materials. Now they're not necessarily generic as much as they are intelligent materials. Inside there you actually get the weight of that material added to your model so you can find out how much it weighs. It also gives the physical characteristics. How does it look in real life? Or at least as close as they can get in a simulated view screen. That's really neat. But if you don't really care about those because you're limited with those, you have this library now. And this library doesn't carry over all of that, like the weight of whatever material. It's just for colors and surfaces and things. So if you wanted in this case, if you want to look for polished, it's all alphabetic. So just keep going here to polished and you'll find like polished blue or there we go. Here, I'm going to go to silver, or there's semi-polished. Now, if you select silver, it will pick up on the entire part, all right, or whatever you pick on. All right, have a little fun with that. You don't have to pick silver. You can pick whatever you like. And then if you don't like it, just pick a different one. Now, how about individual surfaces or features? Like, let's say I wanted the chamfer to be colored. You could click on it, and over here you could go to create finish. And now we have that individual face that's selected. All right, and we could select from here different materials. It's not as robust. Maybe it is. I just don't use it for hardly ever. So I'm going to cancel. And here I'm going to show you something else. Watch this. Select the chamfer in the browser on the left. And now go up here and select something. So for example, I'm going to go with smooth dark forest green actually. And then it applies it to that entire feature. Same with the hole. But the hole is one surface we could select, and it's integrated, so we want to select it from here, and we could select the same. All right, so you can see, have fun with that. Select different things. Look at all those different materials. Now, if we want to go a step further, you could go to View, and there's Visual Style. But first, one thing that really stands out is when you make it look more real, to make it look more realistic, is perspective. If you go to perspective, it now gives it a vanishing point. It's like when you look at a long room and notice how it gets smaller by appearance the further you are away from the back wall. That's what's happening here. It's perspective. So you can turn that on and off. It's not the easiest thing to model in when you're in perspective. I usually turn it off. But for visual presentations like this, I turn it on. It's very important. Okay, and now here you could turn on, instead of visual style, you could go to realistic, and it takes away the edges. And you could even go to ray tracing. And now this utilizes the microprocessor. You could hear it gets loud. Probably even slowing down my video, so because it's stealing resources, it takes up all the resources of your computer. And then you'll see here, you can set it to low, draft, or high. The faster your computer, the faster it's going to render. But anyhow, you see here how this actually looks straight across. Let me turn off ray tracing. Make sure you turn it off when you're done, because it will continue to suck up your resources. Now, what I would recommend doing is going to the 3D model, go to Fillet, and let's set this to very small, so 0.005. And now we can select that edge. And you can select other edges too to break them. This will make it look better. Now be careful, if you send this off to a customer, you want to remove these edges. This is just for visualization. But you see those broke the edges, and so they cast a reflection. So now if we go back to View, Visual Styles on Realistic, hit Ray Tracing. Now those edges will show up more realistically. The longer you wait, the better it will look, and so it makes more sense. There is a setting, it's my understanding in here, where those could automatically be turned on, where it kind of does the same thing. I'm not sure where it is. I've never found it, but if anyone ever knows where it is, comment below. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to disable ray tracing. So essentially, that is our very first model, and from here you could actually go to File, and you could export this as a PDF as well and submit it to me. I always really enjoy seeing your renderings and the different colors you choose, and have fun with it. Enjoy the software. It's amazing what it can do. Just wait until we start 3D printing these models. You could take this and send it out as an STL, and there's different formats, and all of you who have 3D printers know. You could comment below some of the different, there's the manufacturing, there's all sorts of settings. If you export, you'll see there's CAD format, and in here under CAD format, you'll find all these different ways you could export this. There's IGES, or there's SAT, and there's STL and USDZ. There's a bunch of them. STL is one of the basics, runs basically on any 3D slicer program, but there's others that are out there too, that are in here too. So anyhow, that pretty much concludes this exercise. I hope you enjoyed this. If you really liked what you see, go ahead and hit that little like button, or even subscribe. I do have new content coming out all the time. What I do is every release I try and make a new video, so there will be a new video for 2025 probably in the next few weeks, because that's coming out really soon. And that's about it. Thank you.